Berlin was a UK philosopher born in Riga, which is in Latvia. So he grew up for some years in the USSR, and later his family moved to UK. And he himself saw some violence when he was in USSR, and later he became very fierce critic of totalitarianism, followed by Stalin. So he was a committed liberal. He was a committed liberal. And he gave a somewhat different kind of justification for liberalism. And that justification for liberalism is important in the context of multiculturalism. In giving this justification, he introduced a new concept called value pluralism. Value pluralism. So let us discuss what is value pluralism and how this is supposed to justify liberalism and multiculturalism. What did Berlin mean by value pluralism? First, let us see what he meant by values. By values, he means like any common definition, certain higher things in life. For example, justice is a value, compassion is a value, courage is a value, equality is a value, honor is a value, and negative and positive liberty are values. What is the difference? Negative liberty is freedom from somebody. You are tied to a tree. You don't have liberty to move. That is, you don't have negative liberty. Positive liberty is you can do what you want from out of your own motivation. That is positive liberty. So these are values. You need to have negative liberty, you need to have positive liberty, compassion, courage, and there is a no final and full list. There are many values like that. Okay, so the point is, he considered some higher things only as values. So he is not using the word values in any unusual sense. Values are defined as otherwise measures of goodness. So Berlin would stick to this definition. But Berlin's point is, there are many values like this, many values like this. Individuals have different values. Individuals have different values. And political systems can have different values. And thinkers can have different values. And he says there is no rational way of finding out which value is superior. For example, which value system is superior to value system 2. He says that one can't say value system 1 is superior to value system 2 in a rational way. This is not possible. So he is talking about values which people consider important, but he says there is no rational way of prioritizing or putting in a hierarchy or ordering. So for example, one system may think V1, V2, V3, V4 is the way it wants to pursue. One system. Another system may think, no, V2 is important, V3 is important, but V1, V4 can. This is system 2. This is system 1. Berlin says, we can't really, through rational means, system 1 is better than system 2. Individuals face this, there are different set of values among individuals, among systems, and there is no rational way of finding out which is superior. So this he calls value pluralism. Value pluralism. inability to prioritize which is better, which means there are many values cannot be arranged in a hierarchical sense. For example, take an individual, an artist, Berlin says, may have two values, that is to pursue his art versus take care of his family, which is very poor. So one artist may choose art and another artist may choose taking care of the family, and both are important values. So which one is a better one, which is a higher life? Berlin says, we can't say. Okay, so that is why Berlin says that, for example, liberty may have to be curtailed in order to make room for social welfare. So contain liberty, so let not contain liberty. So maybe that may reduce income inequalities and that may help social welfare, something like that. And Berlin says liberty is a value and social welfare is also a value. Okay. And he says rationality and calculation cannot be applied. Sorry, rationality and calculation can be applied only to means and subordinate ends, but never to the ultimate ends. So this is an important point. He says that reason can be applied only at a lower level. Reason at lower levels, but no reason is possible at higher levels. Like you can't use reason to find out what are the ends of life. Okay. So this is what Berlin thinks on value pluralism. Okay. Now, what are its implications? Berlin thinks that most of the problems in the world were because value pluralism is not realized. Many thinkers and many people thought there can be a clear hierarchy of values and there is one final value. And there is this final value or hierarchy exists. That is one. And next, a political system should realize this. So there is a clarity of the value, and political system should realize this. Berlin calls this kind of thinking is monism. And Berlin thought this is responsible for many problems. So this is what he says. Problem with monism. From Plato through Christianity to Enlightenment, one assumption was common to all these views. It was at any rate in principle possible to draw some outline of the perfect society or the perfect man. Perfect man or perfect society is clear value ordering. One knew what values one should realize and in which kind of hierarchy. Problems of value were in principle soluble and soluble with finality. Okay. So Berlin says this thinking he calls monism had been man's problem, and solution to monism or antidote to monism is value pluralism. So with value pluralism, one shouldn't have these problems. Okay. He says that it is this monistic thinking that led to many problems. The possibility of final solution. Final solution. Even if we forget the terrible sense these words acquired in Hitler's day, turns out to be an illusion and a very dangerous one. So communists believed in final solution, fascists, Hitler believed in final solution. He says these are very dangerous. For if one really believes that such a solution is possible, then surely no cost would be too high to obtain it. This is what Mao did. This is what Stalin did. So, Berlin thinks that this belief in monism is responsible for violence, whereas value pluralism leads to tolerance. Okay. And Berlin thinks value pluralism is real, not that value pluralism is good from the viewpoint of tolerance. For example, he says that you can't compare two different ages. For example, he says take medieval world versus ancient. So look at this. One is morality of the pagan world, ancient world. Its values are courage, vigor, fortitude in adversity, public achievement, order, discipline, happiness, strength, justice, above all, assertion of one's proper claims and the knowledge and the power needed to secure this satisfaction. You can say these are the values during Greek times. And against this moral universe stands in the first and foremost place Christian morality. The ideals of Christianity are charity, mercy, sacrifice, love of God, forgiveness of enemies, contempt for the goods of this world, faith in the life hereafter, belief in salvation of the individual soul as being incomparable value. These are Christian values. Berlin says neither system was categorically superior to the other. This is there, this is there. You can't compare, you can't rationally prioritize Christian values superior to values of Greek times. So each age has its own values, and Berlin says they are not comparable. But does this mean that Berlin thinks anything is okay? No. For example, he knows that slavery is bad. Though there may be a system with certain values that produces the slavery, and he may have respect for such a system, but on the whole he thinks that slavery is bad. So value freedom doesn't mean, or value pluralism doesn't mean that anything can go. Slavery is bad, for example. Torture is bad. Totalitarianism is bad. Communism is bad. Racism is bad. So Berlin thinks there are certain values, common, universal, to all and all ages. Torture is bad. Deception hurts. If there are no common universal values, there can't be any communication among humans. Okay. So Berlin's problem is about fixing the higher order values in a hierarchical way. It is not that there are no values at all. Humans share certain values, there is no doubt about it. Okay. So that is value pluralism. And Berlin thinks that one famous liberal who shared this value pluralism, though he did not use the value pluralism, was J.S. Mill. Berlin has a appreciation of Mill, but not Bentham. So Berlin writes in one essay titled John Stuart Mill and Ends of Life. In his essay John Stuart Mill and Ends of Life, he says this about Mill. Mill is still the clearest, most candid and persuasive and moving exposition of the point of view of those who desire an open and tolerant society. Mill is not considered monist. Mill, though he is using utilitarianism, Berlin thinks that Mill's utilitarianism, unlike Bentham's, assumes value pluralism, because Mill is trying to say this is what gives happiness, but happiness is coming from variety of sources, which is nothing but value pluralism. This is what he says. Happiness is a complex and infinite in Mill, because he packs into it the many diverse and perhaps not always compatible ends which men in fact pursue for their own sake, and which Bentham had either ignored or falsely classified under the head of the pleasure. Love, hatred, desire for justice, for freedom, for power, for beauty, for knowledge, for self-sacrifice, all giving happiness. In Mill's writings, happiness comes to mean everything very like realization of one's wishes, whatever they may be. This stretches its meaning to the point of vacuity. So, how one gets happiness is different for different individuals, reflecting different values, which is nothing but value pluralism. And Berlin thinks this value pluralism leads anybody to liberalism. He says, if I am a pluralist, it means that I understand how people can come to accept these other values, whether because of their historical or geographical circumstances, or for whatever reason. The point is that I don't simply reject them as not mine and therefore contain nothing to do with me, as real relativism does. But I seek to understand what kind of world it is for those who don't share my values or beliefs, and how one come to pursue values which are not mine. So this is many things. It says, I should try to understand others' values and why and how they got those values. How theirs are different from mine. I should have this spirit of inquiry and understanding. And surely this is one very important point in the context of multiculturalism. So you have different cultures, with a different set of values. V3. Berlin thinks you should try to understand why and how those values came up and why they are different from mine. So it calls for sympathy. It calls for curiosity. It calls for kindness. It calls for not being ethnocentric. Okay. In fact, these values are in anthropology considered cultural relativism in anthropology. So Berlin believes in this, but his idea of relativism is different. He felt that relativism is something like, I simply reject them as not mine and therefore nothing to do with me. He thinks that this is what relativism is. So he rejects such a relativism where they are just not mine and so I don't care. Berlin wants people to appreciate, understand, feel, compassionate. Compassionate others' minds. In fact, he thinks it is the task of a philosopher to see how others think, to enter others' minds and feel. So that's what he thinks the task of philosopher is. Okay. So this means, it is not simply tolerance, but it is that some kind of appreciation and inevitability of difference. And so of cultural diversity. Okay. Now he discusses the relationship between liberalism and pluralism. Can liberals also miss pluralism? This issue is raised because one criticism against Berlin's theory is, if you are talking about value pluralism, then are you not making, is this a value? And so if it becomes such a value that you want everybody to follow, so it means if you are highlighting value pluralism as the most important value, then it means you are actually saying that there is a hierarchy and yours is the best. But Berlin doesn't think so. Berlin thinks that pluralism means the real tolerance. He says that one can believe in liberalism, but when one tries to impose liberalism on everybody, then it becomes illiberalism. It becomes denial of value pluralism. So he says that one can be a liberal, and if he imposes it on others, he actually becomes illiberal, or he's not believing in value pluralism. It may look a little complicated, but let us see what Berlin said. He says, It is true that some pluralists urge the particular importance on their views of some values such as variety or autonomy. So some may think variety is important, individual liberty is important, which on other views may be less important or perhaps not value at all. Once again, there is no inconsistency between their doing this and their accepting that this is one value among others. If they move to asserting the overriding importance of this value, as some liberals do, then they may begin to be in trouble with pluralism. So he says, if somebody is saying that you should accept value pluralism, there is no hierarchy, and then I will punish everybody who thinks that there is hierarchy, it means there is no belief in pluralism. This is similar to I believe in non-violence. Anybody who opposes non-violence, I will put him in a jail and harm him. So, strong belief in liberalism can make one illiberal. Liberalism is not about strong belief. Liberalism is about skepticism. Liberalism includes skepticism that I may be wrong, including in being liberal. I may be wrong. So I am sympathetic. I am fallible. So as Mill thinks that fallibility is one aspect of liberalism, skepticism is an aspect of liberalism, non-finality is an aspect of liberalism. So if somebody is teaching how liberalism is bad, a liberal will not imprison him. He will just say, okay, you please talk about it. So liberal accepts criticism. If he is not liberal. He is not believing in value pluralism. He thinks he is absolutely right. Okay. So, these are the ideas that Berlin had, and he felt that value pluralism is essential for liberalism and democracy. I based my understanding of this article from this, understanding this lesson from this article, A Liberal Pluralism, Berlin and Mill by Alex Zakaria. Just